Hi, I'm Ryan. Welcome to Goose River Farm. I'm here today to talk to you about some methods of protection for overwintering your plants in your garden, whether you got a small space, a medium-sized space, or a really, really big space. So we're in the hoop house right now. It's an unheated space, 20 feet by about 13 feet. And this is where I'm starting some of my seedlings to grow right here in the hoop house. With enough protection and creating your own little microclimate zone, you can get a little ahead on the game with your starting of seedlings. So these guys are inside of a 10 by 20 tray with no holes, so you can bottom water, which means pouring a little bit of water in the bottom and allowing the plant to kind of soak it up from the top, which is what you want to do to help prevent any fungal growth on the surface. We've still got a little bit going on these guys. They might be a little bit too damp, but when you leave the dome on over top, you're again helping with that microclimate by not allowing as much evaporation to go on. Anything that does evaporate just comes to the top of the dome, comes back down onto the plants, and we've got basically a greenhouse within a greenhouse. So this little plant area here gets nice and warm. We keep them all pretty close together on the shelf here so that they kind of share each other's warmth a little bit. It's up off of the ground, so we've got kind of warm air moving underneath them as well through the day. And honestly, in this greenhouse, it's been getting up to like 15 or 18 degrees in the end of February. So it doesn't take much to get the soil temperature to where it needs to be for some of those early season greens to get going. All right, so I've got my cold frame here on the ground, which is a unique way to try and grow or maintain some potted vegetables or even grow in ground in a small space. All right, you might not see it on the cover of Cold Frame Monthly. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing operation, but it is doing the job, and that's pretty much what it comes to when you're trying to DIY it in the garden. I made my cold frame out of some spare half rounds from my neighbor's mill. This window that we found on the side of the road in Machosen. It's got this nice brass handle on it. It cracked underneath the snow load, but trusty old tuck tape holding it together for about a year. And inside of it, I generally just do some potted herbs to keep those going over the winter and get a head start on potato bags. So on the left here, we can just start to see our potato sprouts emerging from the bag. We've got one volunteer spinach plant growing over here. This is some perennial arugula that I cloned off of our other plant in the garden, so now we'll have a little bit more arugula going on this year. We've got some garlic chives, we've got some golden oregano, and we got some mint coming up for some early season mojitos. So there's lots of different ways to build a cold frame. Some people will actually dig it right into the side of kind of a slope, so you got the natural heat retention of Mother Earth working for you. You can just build it with nice thick walls and figure out a way to insulate it that way. But yeah, ours is with some pretty good thick half rounds, and then we've insulated with just some old camping mattresses. We've got the sky on the back with the reflective side, because that's where the sun's coming in, so it kind of bounces in, warms it up. A few extra soil bags stapled to the side to kind of hold back the wind, and then the bottom is got a good thick layer of wood chips there too to kind of keep things insulated from the bottom and just to keep the weed pressure from coming in and taking over the space as well. All right, so this is a outdoor growing space, but even though it's outdoors, we still have some protection on some of the beds with just simple low tunnels, protecting stuff like mustard and kale, carrots, onions, black radish, and some herbs. So we'll poke around and have a look at some of those. Yeah, just very simple plastic low tunnels. I bought it at a local home improvement store one year. They were on really big discount at the end of the season. They were actually a little bit too low or too long for the beds, so I chopped them in half, and they're kind of all over the garden. This one's been protecting some carrots over the winter. These were planted towards the end of the summer last year. Lived out here in the garden underneath these little low tunnels through that crazy cold snap, negative 14 degrees and snow for weeks. I would just come out, sweep the snow off of the top with a little corn broom, and everything is still just happy and growing. We got carrots, a little shy on color, not shy on taste though. coming up. They are so healthy. You can see all these roots coming off of them. They're just pulling nutrients in from all over the yard. Grab one more out of here. So they're not the biggest things, but as spring progresses, they're going to start to bulk up and get a little bit bigger. So my plan with this kind of intention was to at least utilize the growing space over the winter, so that in early spring we'd be able to come out here, get a harvest, and we'll be able to put in some seeds into this garden space once we pull out the carrots and start up the season. So this was a low tunnel I built myself, a little more sturdy. Didn't have to worry too much about the snow load on this one. I just cut some fence lattice for the middle and some flexible PVC pipe and just some spare sheathing board on the bottom for the frame. And it's been protecting these late planted red onions. Found some free red onion sets at a garden store and had a little bit of space in the garden, so yeah, just threw these guys down, and they should start to bulb up now in the early spring, and yeah, hopefully give us a little early harvest on onions. And then next door, kind of a similar story with some late planted yellow onion sets, and these guys are doing a little bit better, a little thicker. We've got some kale going on in here as well, and a few beets that just growing randomly on their own here. Little baby beets at the moment, but the beet greens are delicious as well. All right, so this was a low tunnel that I obviously built myself. It's not super beautiful, but it's definitely working. Way down the edges with some spare wood and some rocks, and it has been protecting all my herbs. So underneath here, we've got some sage, some Greek oregano, some thyme, some tarragon, golden oregano, and a few different varieties of chives. And again, they were out here underneath the snow, didn't get crushed. The sage stayed nice and tall with the protection of the hoop on there, and a little bit of work getting the snow off of it. But yeah, I'm quite impressed and excited to see this tarragon coming back, because it just got put in the garden last year, and that's a pretty pricey herb to lose to frost. All right, so this bed on the side of the hoop house here is kind of a mix between some little kalettes that I'm trying for the first time, these kind of purplish green stocky plants, and these big kales. And these big kales are so big because I actually transplanted them from our garden back in the fall into this bed. Once this bed was emptied of the cucumbers and peppers that were growing in here, there wasn't really enough time to seed anything. I didn't have any transplants done to put in here, and I caught a tip from somebody else online that basically just dug up their plants from their outdoor growing space and moved them into an indoor space when they had the space to do so. So it's just kind of like transplanting a tree. Dug a pretty decent root ball around each little individual kale plant, just brought them on in here, and they've been growing just great. I've been trimming off of them for the last month or two. It's kind of a mix between some red Russian and some green leafy, and the kalettes are just kind of coming along now. But yeah, the transplant method for the kale was super easy and simple. Prevented me from losing all these little kale plants and allowed me to take up some space in the tunnel here that otherwise probably would have just been left empty for the winter.